at a municipal level, candidates not aligned to any party are allowed to compete, and some of the independent candidates did very well in the local government elections last year. In 2020, the Constitutional Court declared the Electoral Act unconstitutional because it did not allow for independent candidates to stand for national and provincial government elections as well. It also ordered Parliament to correct the Act, which is meant to pass by June this year. But not everyone is welcoming the bill that is currently being considered by Parliament and has been the subject of oral submissions this week. The One South Africa movement says South Africa's democracy is still being held hostage by the monopoly of political parties. To discuss, we're joined by the leader of One South Africa movement, Mmusi Maimane. Mr. Maimane, thank you for being with us. Firstly, before we get to the bill, if you don't mind, how did the candidates do that One South Africa movement was supporting in the local government elections last year?
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having us. First and foremost, I thought we had a very, very good election last year. We went out to rural communities, we went out to municipalities that are collapsing, and we had a number of candidates came in. We already now have a mayor in a community like Seatback, deputy mayors in Knysna. We've got growth in communities like the Eastern Cape, and certainly we're satisfied that across the country, not only were we able to demonstrate that it is possible for people to vote for their preferred candidate, but we also showed the fact that on average, in municipalities that were outside of Johannesburg, we were able to garner to, if not beaten by the ANC, but to come second or third. And so it reminds us always that more and more people are choosing to have a direct representation of the people that come from their community that they know and that they can hold accountable.
And there was a record number of independent candidates. So it didn't change the political landscape, as it were. Tell me if you agree, but they are making inroads. So do you believe the same would happen if independent candidates were allowed to run at a national and provincial level? What would that actually mean for our democracy?
Given that if you look at the aggregated numbers from last year's local government elections, if independents were a collective, a party, so to speak, they would be third on the ballot, which would demonstrate a challenge to power for all the big major parties. The second major thing is that I think the fear is that we today, even yesterday, received Zondo Commission report. And I think the big political parties fear that if you could give independence to their member of parliament, the great fear would be that they would take power and take instructions from the communities. And then thirdly, I think we show the fact that we are bringing about change in the country. It's not only just about only changing who's in government, but it's making sure that that government works for the people, which at this current state, if you look at Zondo Commission, corruption, criminal acts, the fact that unemployment is high, it demonstrates that we have a government that is not working for the people.
All right, so obviously you're happy that the bill, as the Constitutional Court ordered, allows for independent candidates to run. But tell us about the objections raised in your submission earlier this week. It sounds like you're saying the barriers to them running and being effective basically are too high.
When Judge Madlanga issued that judgment, he wanted to emphasize a couple of things. One, it needed to be power to the people, and secondly, that it had to comply with a constitutional provision that speaks about proportionality, not just for proportionality's sake. What we're finding in this bill is that not only do independent candidates not qualify for the proportional representative component of the Electoral Act, which would render the current bill submitted unconstitutional, it also shows the fact that the barriers that they've put on the table, not only financial, but in terms of threshold to be able to get into parliament, have been raised so high, but much lower for political parties that in fact you would render meaningless the directive that comes from the Constitutional Court to say independence cannot stand. And I think more than anything, given the processing of this bill, in that not only it demonstrates the arrogance of the big political parties in that they have not consulted with the people, they have not put an alternative before them to say you can vote for people who come from your constituency. Instead, on the basis of what the minister and the executive have decided, felt that just a minor amendment that puts all these barriers on the table would suffice. And ultimately, it's becoming quite clear that not only does it undermine accountability, but it certainly disregards the people of this country.
Could you explain to us, as an independent candidate, how far could you go? It sounds like you could get one seat, but then any votes over and above that are discarded because you can't hold more than one seat as one candidate. Just explain it to us.
Well, at one level, that is true. But if you had a collective of independents, obviously you could get more seats. But here's the great difficulty, is that often in the question of arriving at proportionality, if the threshold to get a seat in parliament is, for argument's sake, 10,000 votes, and you get 20,000 votes, if you were a political party, you would get 2 seats. If you're an independent, you'd end up losing 10,000 seats, and those 10,000 citizens actually would have their votes wasted. So what we cannot do is allow a system where votes are wasted, that people's voice is ignored. So you need to use a single transferable model that would allow for another independent to be able to come through, given that we've proposed that more people, more independents can represent, say, a city like Johannesburg or a city like KZN or a city like Cape Town. So to us, the basic argument is that actually the principle here should not be undermined of ensuring that every vote counts and every citizen's voice is listened to.
So you're saying sort of pool the independent candidates. Those 10,000 votes won't go to the person who was elected, though. It'll go to another independent candidate. How does that get decided? Does the one who is elected nominate who takes their votes?
You've got it absolutely correctly. It's a system called the single transferable vote, which is used in many democracies over the world, where effectively you would say, if I get the seats over this particular percentage, I'd then be able to sponsor those similar votes to another candidate of my choosing in the same constituency that is being proposed, so that we can achieve constitutional muster of proportionality, and the second part, which is that no vote is wasted.
Are there international precedents? What can we look at?
Certainly. South Africa is anomalous in that we're the only ones who have kept the system as we have it now. Most countries in Africa have direct elections, not only of their members of parliament, but direct elections of the president, which is what effectively means that every elected official works for the people. Secondly, when you look at countries where constituency-based model comes in, it means when a member of parliament signs oath to, such as the UK and many different parts of the world, even the United States, etc. When you take oath to the constitution of the republic, not of the political party. Whereas in our system, if the party says you will vote against the constitution, actually you obey the party ahead of the constitution. And then lastly, I think that it's a system that has been piloted over the world that demonstrates that actually, as President Kgalema Motlanthe, as even President Mandela said, the 1994 arrangement was designed as an interim transition. It wasn't set up that we would eternally be this way. And going into 30 years of democracy, surely it's about time that we review and come back to saying, what did we want to achieve by the democracy we have?
All right, we'll see if your warnings are heeded around the bill as it currently stands. Mr. Mashaba, if you don't mind, before I let you go, I'd love to know your take on the fortunes of Herman Mashaba and Action SA. You resigned shortly after he did from the DA. Athol Trollip is there now. Do you ever personally think of getting back in the fray with a political party?
I certainly am building a movement that wants to empower citizens. I think, as I've spoken extensively about what political parties do, I'm very reluctant to say, let's start a typical political party in the same way, because you end up with the same problems I'm describing. I want to get back to allowing people to have power. We will be standing in 2024. And so I'm not lost to, if you like, the political fray. I certainly believe we have a role to bring in this country, and we will make sure we bring electoral reform, ensure that there's law and order, and create an economy that works.
All right. We were talking there about Herman Mashaba, but speaking to One South Africa movement leader, Mmusi Maimane, thank you very much for your time tonight. We take a short break. Lots more to come on The Full View.